I never liked the taste of regret. It's bitter and it sticks no matter how much sugar you stir into your tea. I know that now. But back then, in September 1992, I thought dreams were enough. I thought hard work, honesty, and a fire in your chest could bend the world your way. I was wrong. I was 42, a nurse, a mother, and a woman with blistered heels from standing too long and too many late shifts under the humming fluorescence of Caloundra Hospital. 20 years of watching lives begin and end in whitewashed rooms. 20 years of holding hands that would never hold back. And yet all I could think about was building something of my own. Something with Jamie, my son, beside me. Jamie was 16. Tall for his age. Quiet, always sketching. His father's hazel eyes looked back at me every time he frowned in concentration, pencil in hand. His dad, Peter, left when Jamie was 5. Vanished like mist. Took his promises with him. I didn't cry. Not then. Not for him. I hardened. We lived in a weathered cottage in Caloundra, not far from where the waves slammed into the cliffs. That ocean, it speaks to you if you listen. It doesn't whisper. It roars. And I used to think it was cheering me on. Daring me to leap. That's when I saw the sign. For sale. Banksia Convenience. Inquire within. It was a squat little shop, tin awning drooping like tired shoulders. Paint peeling like a sunburn. But when I walked inside, the bell over the door jingled like a memory. It smelled like dust and sugar, like the ghosts of school kids who used to spend their lunch money on lollies and soft drink. The heart of a neighborhood if you believed in that kind of thing. I did. And then I met him. Vincent Hartley. 54. Silver hair, combed like he was auditioning for an ad campaign. Blue eyes, warm voice. The kind of man who knew how to tell a story, especially the kind that broke your heart just enough to lower your guard. We sat in that shop drinking instant coffee from cracked mugs. He said he had 6 months to live. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. His kids needed security. He wanted someone with soul to take the shop. Someone who'd honor its legacy. God help me, I believed every goddamn word. I should have listened to the tick in my gut. The one that twitched when he cried too easily. When the ledgers looked a bit too perfect. But I didn't. I saw Jamie's future in that shop. I saw a second chance. And dreams, dangerous, blinding things, clogged up the common sense in me. A week later I signed the papers. $180,000. 60 from my savings. The rest a loan that knotted my stomach every time the phone rang. For a while I lived in the glow of it. Me, Jamie, and a shop with a bell that sang every time someone walked through the door. I thought I'd made it. It didn't take long for the glow to dim. First it was the coolers. Flickering, rattling, humming like they had one foot in the grave. Then the shelves half bare by the end of my second week. Orders hadn't gone out. Accounts hadn't been paid. And the regulars, well, there weren't as many as Vincent claimed. The shop was barely breathing. I went through the books again. Sat at the counter long after closing, Jamie asleep at home, my hands shaking as I flipped pages. The numbers didn't match. None of them. I called the tax office, pretending to be a potential buyer doing a check. Their records didn't match Vincent's returns. It hit like a punch to the ribs. The shop didn't make $300,000 a year. It barely made 90. There were no customers lining up. Just kids nicking lollies, a few old-timers grabbing smokes and milk. I'd been conned. Vincent wasn't dying. There was no cancer. He was healthy. Alive. Laughing maybe in some fancy house while I counted coins to keep the lights on. But I didn't tell Jamie. Not yet. He was still in year 11, head down in his schoolwork, sketchbook never far from reach. I couldn't add this weight to his shoulders. I couldn't admit I'd fallen for a smile and ruined our future. So I doubled down. I poured my own money into the shop. Painted the walls sunshine yellow. Fixed the coolers with a rusty compressor I bartered for in a junkyard. I opened at 6 a.m. and closed after 10. Feet aching, eyes gritty, but always smiling. Always smiling. Jamie helped after school. Stacked shelves. Cleaned floors. His movements were quick, practiced. But his eyes, they were distant. Watching me too closely. He knew something was wrong. "We'll make it, Mum," he said once quietly. Like a prayer. I smiled. I always smiled. Because if I didn't, I might never stop crying. The shop became everything. My prison. My battlefield. My chapel. I prayed there, standing behind the register, begging the universe for a break. I learned every regular's name. What they bought. What they didn't say out loud. Mrs. Delaney liked her tea weak. Mr. Thompson wanted his newspaper folded just so. Young Sarah from the bakery always bought a Coke and a Kit Kat. I baked Anzac biscuits to give away with coffee. Ran promotions that cost more than they earned. Changed the layout. Put up posters. Anything. Everything. Desperation wears a lot of faces. Mine was always smiling. But money didn't care. Suppliers started pulling out. I owed them too much. One sent a letter with red print that made my stomach turn. The electricity bill followed. Then the bank. Always the bank. I'd answer the phone, bracing myself, smiling even though they couldn't see. I sold my mother's pearl necklace, her wedding pearls. I didn't tell Jamie. Just told him it was time to let go of old things. He brought me dinner. Leftovers. Quiet offerings. Spaghetti bolognese, fish fingers, a meat pie once. He never said anything, but I knew. He knew I wasn't eating. He'd kiss my cheek, too grown up now to cling but still soft-hearted. "You're doing great, Mum," he'd say. I'd nod. I always nodded. But by 1995 I was breaking. The dream was bleeding out. When I sold the shop to a young couple named Tom and Lisa for $80,000, I cried. Not relief. Not grief. Just emptiness. I lost $100,000. My savings. My pride. My legacy. We moved inland to a flat in Nambour. Damp walls. Peeling paint. The kind of place that holds on to sadness. Jamie was 19. Working odd jobs, saving for London. He wanted to be an artist. I wanted that for him too. I worked part-time at a chemist, counting pills and biting my tongue. I never told him how bad it really was. I couldn't. Not with those eyes. The same hazel eyes that used to look at me from Peter's face. My son had enough ghosts of his own. And I wasn't about to add mine. There are friends and then there's Bart. Bartholomew James Callahan. Jamie's best mate since kindy. Freckled nose, cheeky grin, the kind of kid who could charm his way out of a schoolyard fight. Or into one depending on the mood. He practically lived at our place when they were young. He knew where I kept the biscuit tin and how I took my tea. When Jamie's father left, it was Bart who filled the silences, who made Jamie. By 1998, Jamie had made it to London. He sent postcards with messy ink and doodles in the margins. Big Ben. The Thames. Little sketches of strangers he met on trains. He was chasing his dream. Me. I was 50, still in Nambour. Still working. Still tired. Bart had gone into real estate by then. Sharp suits, fast talk, but the same heart. He still dropped in. Brought me fish and chips or a bottle of red. Told me stories about clients who thought they were royalty. One night, over shepherd's pie and tea, he asked again about the shop. About Vincent. I told him everything. I thought he'd curse. Maybe shake his head. But Bart just sat back, silent, eyes sharp. "I'll fix it," he said eventually. I laughed. Shook my head. "You can't fix that, love. That ship's sunk." But Bart never let things go. Not when it came to the people he loved. In 1999 he heard Vincent was selling his house. A cliffside mansion in Noosa. For bedrooms. A view of the ocean that could make your heart ache. Word was, Vincent wanted to downsize. Fewer stairs, easier life. Bart saw his chance. He didn't tell me what he was doing. Not then. He just smiled, shook his head and said, "Let's catch up soon, yeah?" And then he went hunting. Bart played it cool. He showed up at Vincent's open house wearing his agency badge, clean-shaven, all charm and confidence. Told Vincent he'd heard the property was going on the market and that he had high-end buyers lined up. Vincent, smug as ever, welcomed him in. Offered him a gin and tonic. He didn't recognize Bart. Didn't connect the dots. Bart walked the halls of that house like he owned it. Floor-to-ceiling glass, polished timber floors. The kind of kitchen that made your hands itch to cook something just for the pleasure of it. He asked questions. Took photos. Measured door frames. He watched. Vincent golfed on Saturdays. Always. Bart confirmed that by asking casually during one of their chats. Vincent bragging about his handicap. The man kept a schedule like a rich retiree. Predictable. One afternoon while the open house was underway, Bart spotted a trapdoor in the garage ceiling. Nothing special. Just a little panel behind some leftover paint tins. But Bart had a hunch. After the visitors left and Vincent was still out, Bart dragged over a ladder. Climbed up. The crawl space was tight, dusty, suffocating. He found a box. Wooden. Padlocked. Heavy. He took it with him. Fast. Drove it to a mate's place in Caloundra. A fisherman's shed with old tools and the stink of salt. Crowbar. Prick. Inside, gold bars. Real ones. 24 of them. About 2 kilos worth. No paperwork. No markings that could tie them to anyone. Just quiet, heavy justice. Bart didn't take them all. He knew better. He kept 4. Just enough to leave the top layer looking untouched. Enough to fool a man who wasn't expecting a trick. Then he made a call to Mick Delaney, Mrs. Delaney's cousin, the rough kind of bloke who didn't ask questions. Mick, Bart said, I need 20 bars made of lead. Same size, same weight. Can you do it? Could. They used Bart's measurements, made a mold, poured the lead. Bart sanded and painted the bars himself. Matched the dull shine as close as he could. Then he waited. Next open house, Bart made the switch. Up the ladder. Into the crawl space. Heart hammering. Hand steady. 20 gold bars out. 20 lead bars in. Box resealed. Tape like before. 4 real bars sitting on top, untouched. The illusion perfect. He slid the box back into place. Drove off with the real bars hidden under the floor mat in his Uda. The house sold weeks later. $1.2 million. Vincent moved. Took his box of lies with him. Bart watched the papers. Watched the town. Waited. Nothing happened. Vincent never said a word. Bart sold the gold in pieces. He drove to Brisbane to a string of dodgy pawnshops tucked between tattoo parlors and discount liquor stores. One bar here, another there. Always under a different name. Cash only. No questions asked. He walked out with envelopes stuffed with notes and a pounding heart. He could have kept it. Bought a new car. Paid off his own loans. Gone to Bali and drunk himself stupid. But he didn't. Instead, one Friday evening in June he knocked on the door of my flat in Nambour. I still remember the way he stood there, sheepish, shoulders hunched, holding an envelope like it was on fire. Don't ask, he said. Bart. Just take it, Ellen. He didn't stay. Just dropped it in my hands and walked off, disappearing into the dusk with that same old grin that had seen Jamie through 1,000 scraped knees and heartbreaks. Inside the envelope, $35,000 in bundled cash. I sat on the couch and counted it 3 times. Then I cried. Not loud sobs. Just tears. Slow and quiet. It wasn't everything I'd lost. Not by a long shot. But it was enough to breathe again. I paid off what remained of the loan. Bought a second-hand Corolla that didn't stall in the rain. Replaced the moldy carpet with cheap vinyl. I even sent Jamie some money in London. Told him it was a work bonus. He never asked. And I kept Bart's secret. For 24 years I held it close like a warm coal in the chest. Not shame. Not guilt. Something else. The knowledge that someone out there had seen what I went through and said, no. Not on my watch. That kind of loyalty doesn't have a price. That kind of justice? It's quiet. It doesn't need a court or a verdict. It just needs someone brave enough to say, you don't get to walk away clean. Bart and I didn't speak of it, not for a long time. Life rolled on. He built a name for himself in real estate, nothing flashy, just steady. Word around town was he could close any deal with a handshake and a crooked grin. He still dropped by. Brought takeaway or a bottle of cheap wine. Fixed the back gate when it sagged. Installed a ceiling fan in summer without me asking. He never charged. Never made it a big thing. We weren't lovers if that's what you're thinking. We were something else. Something more complex. A bond built not on romance but on fire-tested trust. On shared silence. On things done and never spoken aloud. Sometimes we'd sit on my little veranda and watch the rain roll down the hills. He'd smoke a ciggy, I'd nurse a cuppa, and we'd talk about everything but that. Then one night, maybe 10 years after it all happened, he said, you ever think about what you'd have done if you'd known? Back then. I thought for a long moment. The rain was soft on the tin roof, a lullaby of years gone by. I'd have told you not to do it, I said. Begged you probably. He nodded. I know. That's why I didn't. We didn't say much else that night. Jamie came back from London in 2007 for a few months. Brought a girl with him, Claire. Sweet, sharp, so right through people. I liked her immediately. They stayed in town while Jamie painted and Claire freelanced as a writer. He loved Bart. Called him Uncle. When he died in 2015, stroke, sudden, cruel, I sat in the front row of the service. Jamie flew back for it. Gave a speech that made the whole room weep and laugh within the same minute. Said Bart had been the kind of man who'd steal from the devil just to buy you lunch. I never told Jamie the full story. Not until last year. We were having tea in my kitchen, the hills green through the window, my watercolor of the coast hanging on the fridge. I told him everything. He listened silent. Didn't blink much. Then he said, "Bart. That bloody legend." And hugged me like I was something precious. That's why I'm telling this now. Not for justice. Not for revenge. But because every story has two sides. And sometimes the heroes wear grins instead of capes. Sometimes they carry quiet rage and do wild things for the people they love. Sometimes they're the reason you survived. It was years before the consequences of Bart's actions knocked on my door. For a long time, it felt like he'd pulled off a perfect crime. No one came asking. No one poked around. Until one summer around 2010, a man in a dark blue sedan parked across from my flat and didn't leave for hours. He was there again the next day. And the next. He wasn't police. Too casual. But too still to be passing time. Eventually I walked up, tapped on his window and said, "You've got questions. I've got tea. Pick one." He followed me inside. His name was Andrew Renshaw. Private investigator. Hired by someone in Brisbane with ties to Vincent. He didn't say who. All I know is, something valuable went missing. And your friend Bart was sniffing around just before it happened. I didn't lie. But I didn't give him anything either. "Bart sold that house," I said. "He worked hard. He did good by people. If you're looking to dig dirt on a dead man, you're wasting your time." He studied me. I stared back. I'd been stared down by worse. Cancer patients begging to live. Children dying too young. You don't survive nursing without learning how to keep your face calm while your insides churn. Renshaw didn't come back. But for weeks after I watched my window. Jumped at phone calls. It reminded me what Bart had done had ripples. Maybe someone was looking for that gold. Maybe they'd find traces of it. Or maybe karma was slower than I expected but not any less real. I didn't regret it. But I carried it. And it changed how I saw the world. Bart had made me believe in justice again, but justice had its cost. It isolated us. Tied us together in secrecy. And it meant I had to lie, even if just by omission, to Jamie. To myself. For years I lived in fear that Bart's ghost would bring shadows to my doorstep. That what he'd done for love would come back in the form of police knocks or legal threats. It never did. But fear isn't always about what happens. Sometimes it's about what could. Still, if I had the chance to change it, to go back and stop him, I wouldn't. I'd still choose him. Because what he gave me wasn't just money. It was a way forward. In early 2017, a brown envelope landed in my letterbox with no return address. I almost threw it out, junk mail I figured, but something made me open it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Handwritten. Neat cursive. "Ellen, if you're reading this, it means I've decided it's time. Time to be honest." It wasn't signed. But I didn't need a signature. It was Vincent. He wrote about the shop. How he doctored the numbers. Lied to my face. Played on my kindness. Said he hadn't expected to feel guilty, but he had. And it had eaten at him. He didn't confess to the gold or the switch. Maybe he didn't know. Or maybe he didn't want to put it in writing. But he did mention Bart. "I know someone changed the books on me later. That box was lighter than I remember. He did it for you. I can't even be angry." My hands shook. I sat down at the kitchen table and stared at the words. The ink smudged slightly like someone had paused too long over a single letter. There was a postscript. "There's a ledger. In a safety deposit box at Noosa Credit Union. It has everything. What I did. Who I hurt. You'll know what to do with it." The letter ended there. No apology. Not really. Just facts. Cold, calculated facts. I didn't go to the bank. Not right away. I folded the letter, slid it into an old cookbook Bart once gave me for my birthday and left it there. But it festered. The idea that I was sitting on evidence. That I was keeping something in the dark. Jamie noticed. He always noticed. "You okay, Mum?" he asked over the phone one night. "You sound distant." I lied. I visited the bank 2 weeks later. Told them I was Vincent's sister. I had ID that passed. The box was still there. The ledger inside. It was meticulous. Names, amounts, dates. He'd scammed more than just me. Elderly couples. Small business owners. One bloke in Brisbane who lost his entire retirement fund. I brought it home. Read every page. Cried. Then I put it in a sealed envelope and mailed it to the Queensland Fraud Squad. No name. No return address. Just the truth finally moving out into the world. I never heard back. But the weight I'd carried for decades shifted. And for the first time in years I slept without dreaming of knockdowns, lies and what? The letter. The ledger. The long-delayed truth. I thought it might be the end of the story, but life rarely ties itself up in a bow. Months passed. Then nearly a year. I went on with my days. Painting, walking, volunteering once a week at the hospice. Trying to give back a little of what the world had given me. Or maybe what it had taken away. Then the phone rang. A voice on the other end said, "Mrs. Whitaker? This is Senior Detective Carla Hume with the Queensland Police." My breath caught. She was calm, polite. Said they'd received anonymous materials. That there was now an active investigation into historic fraud, including potential proceeds of crime. Said they'd like to speak to me. I knew this moment might come. So I didn't lie. I went in. I told the truth, or most of it. I said I was a victim. That I'd received a letter from Vincent confessing. That I had forwarded the ledger anonymously because I didn't know what else to do. I left Bart's name out. Detective Hume watched me carefully. I could tell she didn't believe I knew nothing more. But she had no proof. Bart was gone. The gold was gone. All that remained were names in a book and a trail long gone cold. They never charged me. Didn't have grounds to. But they kept my name. Kept me on file. And that changed things. I started getting looks around town. Subtle ones. The kind where people smile too tightly or stop talking when you walk in. Someone even keyed my Corolla outside the IGA. Thief, scratched in crude letters on the bonnet. It wasn't just about Vincent anymore. It was about what people thought they knew. Jamie called one night furious. Someone had emailed his gallery, an anonymous tip, claiming his mother had laundered stolen money. He wanted it. It broke something in me. Not just guilt. Not just fear. But the slow realization that secrets, even those born from love, corrode the things they're meant to protect. When Jamie finally called again, he said, "You were just trying to survive. I get it now. I don't like it. But I get it." And that was enough. Not forgiveness exactly. But understanding. And maybe that's all we ever get in the end. Not justice. Not clean slates. Just someone who stays on the line after the worst has been said. Someone who decides the story's not finished. Not yet. Rebuilding with Jamie wasn't fast. It wasn't neat. It came in awkward conversations and long silences that neither of us rushed to fill. He didn't fly home. Didn't drop everything. But he started calling again. Every Sunday. At first just a few minutes. Then longer. Gradually the space between us shrank. I sent him a photo of one of my new watercolors. Gum trees at dusk. The kind that look like they're on fire just before the sun drops behind the hills. He messaged back, "You still see the world like a survivor, Mum. But now I see it too." That one got me. Claire came back into the picture too. She was the one who reached out first, actually. Emailed me about a writing fellowship in Brisbane she thought I should apply for. "Stories like yours need air," she wrote. "They can't live locked in old ledgers." I didn't apply. But I printed the email and tucked it into the same cookbook where I kept Vincent's letter. Some things deserve to sit next to each other. In mid-2019, Jamie came to visit. Just him this time. We made tea and sat outside while magpies caroled in the distance. He brought a folder. Drawings, sketches, concepts. "New series," he said. "About memory. About what we inherit. And what we choose not to." He asked if he could include Bart. "Not his real name," he added quickly. "Of course," I said. He'd hate being forgotten. We talked until the sky went purple. Then we didn't talk at all, just listened to the breeze. That night I set the table for two, made lamb stew and pulled out the good wine. Jamie toasted, to old ghosts and the people who don't let them win. And just like that, something between us was stitched back together. Not the same as it had been. Maybe better. Because it had been tested. Because it had survived. Now I'm 73. My hands shake when I paint, but I still do it. Slower now. Fewer strokes. More sky. Jamie's daughter Lucy sends me letters with drawings inside. Crayon whales, suns with faces, clouds shaped like question marks. He calls me Nana Wit. Says she wants to be an artist like her dad. I keep every picture pinned up around the flat like gallery pieces. Some mornings I walk to the park and sit on the same bench I've claimed for years. From there I can see the hills and the sprawl of roofs below. It's not Caloundra. It's not the sea. But it's enough. I bring a thermos, a sketch pad, and sometimes I talk to Bart like he's still listening. You'd like her, you know, I said once out loud. She's got your fire. A woman walking her dog looked at me funny. I smiled. Let her. What's the point of surviving if we don't tell the stories? If we don't honor the ones who helped us crawl through the dark? Jamie's series launched last year. It's called Inheritance. One of the pieces, a charcoal rendering of a man holding a gold bar like it's a lit fuse, hung in the National Gallery of Victoria for 3 months. He didn't say it was Bart. He didn't need to. He sent me a postcard after opening night. Just 5 words. He'd be proud of us. I cried when I read it. Quietly. Not from sadness. But because for the first time I believed it too. I lost a dream once to a liar's smile. But I found my footing again in the loyalty of a friend, the resilience of a son, and the sharp-edged grace that comes from telling the truth. First to yourself, then to the world. That's the story I leave behind. It's not clean. But it's real. And that's enough.